Hello. Welcome along to episode 172 of Adventures in Pop. My name's Simon Jacobs, and today is a slightly unusual episode. I want to talk about Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. In particular, I want to talk about the debut album from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, interestingly entitled Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. It came out in 1976, and the reason I want to talk about it is twofold. One is, I think it's one of the best debut albums ever in the history of rock music. I know that's a wild and crazy claim to make, but I've thought about this quite a lot, and I find it quite difficult to find a debut album that was so perfectly formed, that kind of arrived and just seemed like this band surely had been around forever and ever. And it was a stunning debut, I would say. And we'll talk a little bit more about what the tracks were and the story of it, etc., in just a moment. The other reason I want to talk about it is because, slightly randomly, I've done a cover version of one of the tracks, and I would like to play that to you. But I want to give you the context of talking about this particular Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers album first. Okay, so I won't keep you long, but this is to me, fascinating, really. So this is an album that came out at the end of 1976. And if you think about what was going on in the UK at the end of 1976, basically it was the birth of punk rock. 1976 was its kind of big debut year. So here in the UK, and I was about, how old was I? 13, 14, something like that. Here in the UK, we were beginning to kind of reject those big, prog rock bands who made songs that went on for 12 minutes and had a solo that went on for 11 and a half of those minutes. And we were getting into the idea of basically songs that were much quicker, much faster, both in terms of, beats, but also they were over much quicker. So suddenly we were much more interested in songs that were basically, barely 3 minutes. And because they were barely 3 minutes, they probably wouldn't have lots of extended guitar solos. And I guess at the same time, it's worth saying, in the UK, it was an explosion of disco music at the same time. Punk and disco, strangely, were quite good bedfellows. There was some weird pop music going on, but really it was about the explosion of punk. It was about disco and the rejection of the big old prog rock, bloated fat bands. Well, that was what people were thinking at the time. Okay, so into this mix at the end of 1976 comes Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers from America, from Florida, I believe. And they made this debut album, and it didn't do anything in particular. Right from the start, it is fair to say that I think Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers found more interest and then fairly soon success in the UK before America. And I think it's partly to do with the fact that when you look at the track listing on this first album, all the songs are 2 or 3 minutes. It's like Tom Petty had got the memo that if you're going to make a rock album, you've got to give it some of the principles of this new wave punk thing that's going on in Britain. So they were embraced in this country a good bit before before the Americans cottoned on to how damn good this band were. And incidentally, I'm sure most of you will know, but Tom Petty died in 2017. So it seems extraordinary that it's already like 7 years since he departed. And I've always been a big fan, particularly of album 1, which we're talking about today, and album 3, which is Damn the Torpedoes, which is also a fabulous album. Maybe we'll talk about that another time. So on this debut album, the standout tracks were American Girl, which eventually got featured in the film Silence of the Lambs. Anything That's Rock and Roll was another great track. And in particular, my personal favourite, the second track on the album called Breakdown. And Breakdown is the song that I've attempted to do a cover version of. And in fact, Breakdown is a track that got covered by Grace Jones on one of her, big early 80s albums. And there's something, to me, absolutely perfect about Breakdown. It is, 2 minutes and 50 seconds. It gives us the snarling, fantastic kind of bad boy vocal from Tom Petty. And I also just love the words. It's all right if you love me. It's all right if you don't. I'm not afraid of you running away because I get the feeling you won't. I mean, it's like, so. And he did that quite well on quite a lot of tracks actually. But this was track 2 on the very first album, and I do remember thinking this album sounds like we should have all known it for years and years and years. It was like a rock band coming out of the sky, fully formed, and really looking and sounding the part. And Tom Petty really did look the part as well. Blonde hair, snarly voice, great album cover for the first album. And it just, chock-a-block with really, really good tracks. One other thing, which I do remember, and I've just looked it up to see if it was really true, and it kind of is. In early 1977, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers came to the UK to do a tour, but they weren't headlining. They were supporting Niels Lofgren, if you remember Niels Lofgren. And all of the reviews, and I remember reading them at the time, and I'd just about heard of Tom Petty at that stage. So it's probably 1977 before I'd actually kind of cottoned on to this band. But all the reports, all the reviews basically said to a person, it's one of those great examples where the support band blew away the headliners. The support band was so good that people were turning up for the support band, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and they were they couldn't get off the stage until they'd done an encore and all that kind of stuff. And increasingly, it seems that Niels Lofgren and his band had trouble kind of following them, and Tom Petty and his band were getting better and better. It was quite a long tour in this country, and I think it got a bit awkward. But it's like looking back, the fact remains most people believed that this is one of those great examples where the support band were considerably better than the main headlining act. And guess what? Then Tom Petty and Heartbreakers went on to have a career that lasted for decades. So maybe that was entirely true. But also an interesting time to kind of appear on the scene because so much was changing at the end of the 70s. And it just so happened that, as I say, Tom Petty seemed to have kind of understood that the new requirement was you write these pithy songs, you get in there, you don't muck around. There's nothing self-indulgent about it. You say what you want to say and you get out again and you go on to the next one. Altogether, I would just recommend that you go and listen to the album Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. It's good all the way through. And in particular, I've always loved this song Breakdown because it's so kind of, I don't care what you think. It does that very, very well. So you might want to compare and contrast my version with Tom Petty's version. When I was doing my version, on the one hand, I wanted to stick really closely to the original, but on the other hand, when it came to singing it, I was a bit concerned about, whether I could sing it, authentically me, or whether I was just going to start mimicking Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And I've got a feeling it's a bit more the latter than the former, because I felt I couldn't sing it without hearing his voice in my head. So I think it sounds a little bit like I'm doing a, pretty good but karaoke version of his voice. But having said that, look, see what you think. Have a listen to the one on the album and then have a listen to my own version. And I'm always happy to take your feedback and your comments. I tried not to adopt a strange Florida American accent, but I think I might have failed a bit in trying not to. if you see what I mean. So let's leave it there. I hope you enjoy this. I'm putting it out on YouTube, which means I probably can't monetize this, and I don't care anyway. I'd just like you to hear it. And if you want to subscribe, you're ever so welcome, particularly you. You'd be very welcome indeed. So, hope you enjoy. This is the Tom Petty and Heartbreaker song Breakdown from the very first album. Check it out. And I hope you enjoy it. Bye-bye.
It's alright if you love me. It's alright if you don't. I'm not afraid of you running away, honey. I get the feeling you won't. There's no sense in pretending. Your eyes give you away. Something inside you is feeling like I do, and we've said all there is to say. Baby, break down. Go ahead, give it to me. Break down, honey, take me through